Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the official PodStance Podcast. PodStance, the PunkStance Podcast, if you will. Have you noticed how I've actually perfected saying it now? There's a rhythm to it. There's a certain way, a certain tapper of how to get the words out. Still a bit difficult. Still a mouthful. A lot of P's. Pippity-poppity-poo, as you say. But this is episode 2. I've actually decided to do a second one following the quote-unquote success. I did the air quotes there as well. I've just seen myself in my reflection. God, I look so silly. God, get a haircut as well. Just judging myself now. But yeah, it's the second episode of the official PodStance Podcast. So thank you all for joining. It is me again. Turns out when you have a few friends and you have a full-time job, it's quite hard to get people to come and record stuff about music that they are kind of sort of interested in. So it's back to me again, which I don't mind. It's going to be a bit of a slightly different theme to the last one. Obviously, Cold Front, for those who haven't, spoiled it already. For those of you who haven't listened to the first one, I'd be surprised, because why would you want to listen to the second episode of a podcast when the first one is right there? It's prepped, it's ready to go. Like you can listen to it. I'm not stopping you. Well, no one's stopping you unless you're being held at gunpoint to not listen to it. I'm not sure. Maybe that's the kind of thing people are getting up to. Maybe people are literally being held hostage not to listen to my stuff. I know a lot of people won't, but I'm here anyway. So thank you all who are listening for coming back. For those of you who enjoyed the first one, I'm very glad you did. Cold Front obviously is a very important album in my life. So yeah, spoilers for the first one. That was about Cold Front. This one is another 10-track pop-punk album, which we will get to. But the main theme of this one was initially going to be something a bit more negative, because things have transpired in my life over the past couple of weeks. Some days have been really good. Today especially has been really, really good. Hence why I've sort of shifted it from a more negative mindset. But there have been days that have been very, very hard. There was, I believe, yesterday when I was at work, I dissociated for like 3 hours and just got nothing done. And I had my therapy session, which was great. So I'm well and truly into therapy now. So it's really good. I think it was my 4th session. My God, how things fly. But yeah, we'll be getting into the main segment, as it were, quite quickly, quite rapidly. But I wanted to do a little thing to say that this was initially going to be a more sort of deeper chat into 2 albums specifically. I won't say what they are, because I'll probably end up talking about them in the future. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to involve you with an album that came out this year that is purely about positivity. It's literally the whole point of the album is to bring good vibes and generally just make you feel good. And it's exactly what it did for me when it came out back in August. You might be able to guess it just from me chatting. I'm not going to spoil it, obviously, but yeah, this is one I'm very excited to talk about. It was initially going to be something a bit darker, which I'm sure I'll lean into, but I'm hoping I'll probably focus on that when I'm in a better headspace and able to talk about it in a more confident manner, rather than sort of rambling on about stuff in my life that's troubling me while I'm still very, very sort of worked up about it. So that'll come in due course, I imagine. But we may as well get started with this album, which is one of 2023's best. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. So this discussion was initially going to be between 2 albums, similar to what I was describing in the intro. The 2 positive albums, quote unquote, I was debating with myself this morning and this afternoon about which one I wanted to go for, and I thought one that came out this year is probably more poignant and more relevant to the kind of discussions that we can have. But I did want to give a quick shout out to the one that I was debating with, which was Young Culture's second full-length album, You Had to Be There. So it was another, I think it was 10 tracks as well. There's a lot of 10-track albums going around, especially in the pop-punk sector. But this one came out back in, I think it was mid-November of last year, one of the later albums that I covered. And the whole album was just about sort of moving on with your life and having this general positive influence on yourself. The general theme of self-love doesn't get looked at as much in the pop-punk scene as we would like to. I think there's a general stigma towards the relationship talk and sort of putting your love onto someone else. And that's fine, that's a very common theme that comes up in a lot of the albums. But You Had to Be There was all about more friendships than anything else. It's about hanging out with the people that truly care about you and truly love you for who you are. I mean, I think there were album tracks, some of the main ones, like kind of Over It, kind of speaks for itself, purely about moving on from previous friendships, relationships, whatever it is, and literally just going on and focusing on your own life and not letting anything bother you. And there's such a positive message to that, just purely focusing on you. There's a couple of other songs. I think Whiskey, another one of the singles, described, basically, it's hard to judge, but it uses alcohol as like a metaphor for the relationship that the character was in, like almost tasting like whiskey, sort of that. It was almost a level of familiarity that came with the drink. Not a very good one for me, considering my general opposition to alcohol at the moment, but it was an interesting metaphor to discuss. Good Karma as well, Silver Lining. There's a lot of songs. I think even Tattoo is about like learning from mistakes, like permanent mistakes that you've made, and sort of moving forward with that. Or I might have misjudged that, and the Tattoo is actually sort of a positive inflection on someone's life and how they're remembering something so deeply that they want it sort of embedded in their life forever. It can be taken in a lot of different ways, and there's 10 tracks on here, ending on Serendipity, which is probably my favourite actually, outside of maybe Kinda Over It. But the whole album is mainly about loving yourself and moving on with your life, and it's a very positive message that came about. And it was something that at the time, at the end of the year, it was getting cold. It was around this time actually, but I think it was like early mid-November, and things were getting colder. I was not in a great place in my life at the time, and this one album, I distinctly remember listening to it on a walk back from my, when I was staying at home. I think I was living at home at the time, but I was walking back up the one of the bigger hills with the road, and I remember distinctly there's this small road on a ridge that looks over like this huge, vast, like, I can't really describe it. It's just a horizon, as it were. You've got the major motorway coming through. You've got all these fields. I remember being able to see my old house from my parents' new house, that little view there. But it was this beautiful ridge, and I distinctly remember Kinda Over It coming on and just basking in the sort of positivity. And it was a cold day, but it wasn't dreary. It was sunny. It was just brisk. And I distinctly remember that memory because it was so nice. It was one of the times when I was just on my own listening. I think the sun was just going down, so there was this little sunset going on, and it was really wholesome, a very personal, wholesome moment for me. And that's why the album, I was initially going to talk about it. It was little memories like that it gave me, but it was slightly pipped to the post purely because there's another album that came out this year that had an even bigger impact on me. Specifically, one that I think it was only a few months old, to be honest. I think it came out in late August. But it is an album I've covered on the page already. It's one that I've talked in just way too much detail, to be honest. I didn't really need to, but it's an album that is very, very near and dear to my heart at the moment, which is Bearings, The Best Part About Being Human. So I've had a long run with Bearings. I initially found them back in 2017, so they've been around for a fair number of years, about 6 years now, that I've actually known about their music. But they've been actually going, I think they came out just a year before that with their first EP, which was Home Is, and then just an ellipsis at the end. And it was only about 3 tracks. It was 2016. I can distinctly remember that Indecision was the first song. I can't exactly remember the other 2 for the moment. I have actually got notes this time as well. I've got like 4 pages of notes here because I've come prepared, and I didn't even bother to write down all 3 of the songs on this 3-track EP. So you can tell how ironically prepped I am. I can get loads of detail down and then miss key elements anyway. But Indecision is the only one that really matters because that song is absolutely cracking. And the general theme of Home Is, it was generally about feeling safe and generally feeling content in your own space. I mean, Indecision in itself is kind of a track about making up your mind on growing up. And, these guys had just started the band, and I think it was sort of this early discussion with what they wanted to do and what they wanted to do with their lives. I think it was What's Best for You came after that. And it's quite strange because if you word the full title of the EP with the songs, you get Home Is Indecision, Home Is What's Best for You, and Home Is Absent. I may be looking really deep into it, but what it did was talk about what it means to truly be safe. Because home isn't necessarily your house. I know it's kind of a cop-out statement and also sounds completely batshit, but home isn't always your house. Home isn't always your possessions. Home is very generally the people you hang out with, the people that you spend time with, the people you love. And this EP, only in 3 tracks, delves into that general narrative of what home actually is. As much as it's pretty blatant in the title itself. But that's just what it does, and I think it's an excellent startup. And then it followed with probably some of their best work. We'll get to their future albums in a minute, but when I first found them, they had just released their EP, Nothing Here Is Permanent, and it sort of stuck. It stuck with me because it had this interesting dichotomy of positive and negative feelings. Because Nothing Here Is Permanent has a lot of songs about death and coming to terms with grief and just understanding our mortality, knowing that we don't have forever. I think it was Petrica, the original, the first song, which is one of my all-time favourite pop-punk songs. I thoroughly recommend it. It's an absolutely brilliant track. Talks about someone dying in this person's life and having to live with that. I believe one of the lyrics was, there are 2 dates under your name and the dash that's in between, and all the flowers that surround you, they never give up anything. Never mind, it was all the flowers that surround you will never bring back anything, not give up anything. I was close. I'm just trying to figure out it all in my head. Actually remembering lyrics without them in front of me is pretty tricky. But yeah, so that song itself, and then it goes into the chorus of, I believe that's where the title of the album comes through, as a sad reminder that nothing here is permanent. And it's actually really, really heartfelt. That one, I think Letters Home was the first song I heard from them, which has this very strong family bond, and it's an incredible song. And then Northampton, which is the 4th track, was probably the most impactful when I heard the full EP, purely because it talks about, I believe it's someone suffering from cancer and visiting the hospital. Northampton, I'm not entirely sure. They're based in Ottawa, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Northampton isn't the name of the hospital, but rather maybe a part of Ottawa or maybe a home that they used to live in. But it basically talks about where they used to live and the hospital that they keep frequenting to in order to see this person. And it's very, very touching stuff. And it doesn't really link as much into their future stuff that was a bit more sort of optimistic and kind of bubblegum and bouncy, but that's fine. I think it started them off in really good stead, being able to show some mature songwriting and the tunes themselves, the instrumentation, and actually within that was surprisingly intricate and very well put together. Letters Home, I remember, had an incredible chorus, which is probably why I found it first. And then they moved on, obviously, to their debut album, which was Blue in the Dark, which absolutely took the year by storm. I think they were sort of an underground name at the time, but then when their debut album came out, it was absolutely stunning. I mean, to be honest, their entire discography, if you're a pop punk fan, is well worth delving into. But Blue in the Dark is where they really hit it off. I think it was 11 tracks, a variety of different vibes in there. It's still stuck with a sort of positive, negative juxtaposition. You still have that mix of feelings. Something like their songs, Beautiful Places, Hear Me Say, and Love and Decay, I think, was another one. Love and Decay itself, title-wise, you have that dichotomy right there and then. But you've got, Beautiful Places, Hear Me Say, and a smattering of others aforementioned, talk a lot about just the sort of optimism that comes with life and the kind of things that can really, really keep you going. I think it was Beautiful Places itself. So many beautiful places to find myself some space in. But this album was absolutely spectacular when it came out. I remember Careless Clarity and Tide were 2 nice sort of acoustic tracks that came with it. Blue in the Dark as well, the titular track, I think, was another very soft acoustic song. That's probably their most popular song, actually. I mean, if you make a title track, then it's going to have a bit more clarity, isn't it? But that's exactly where it all started. It popped onto 2020 when Hello It's You, their sophomore album, came out. A bit shorter and a bit sweeter. It didn't have as much impact as the initial album, but it still had a ton of really good ideas about sort of the positive inflections that the band like to bring. Love Me Like You Did is an interesting one that talks about a relationship that hasn't worked but still has still like left an imprint on them. They started experimenting with different sounds as well, like in Dreams was one of their singles, which was a sort of almost lo-fi kind of vibe. It was very, very different. It had an interesting beat, still had some guitar in the background, but was sort of more towards the electronic side of the sound, which is great. I really enjoyed it. I think it was an interesting move for them to take. Another one that was worth talking about in there is Sway, one of their lead singles, which is just, it's not the most sort of complex in terms of its themes, but had it's probably one of the catchiest pop punk songs I've ever heard. just for the kind of beat that it goes for. It has this incredible summer vibe. It's just, I can't explain it without. This is the problem with this kind of thing, because you talk about these songs and then people have this interpretation of how it's going to sound, and then they might go to it and think, oh, this doesn't sound anything like he's described. But the vast majority of them, I know them so well that this is the best way that I can put it, but it's an incredible beat and like really sort of gets you a little toe tapping kind of thing. Hello, It's You actually gained a deluxe edition in 2022. It might have been 2021, but it was a weird couple of years in between that. And those came with Get the Need and Champagne Over Noon, plus I think a version of Dreams was, I think, Take Two. I think they just did another version of it, as well as Golden and then Shaking Your Mind, which is another single that they released. If I remember correctly, Get the Need was my third top song of 2022, because it was just, it's a stunning song. Again, it's hard to describe these without people actually listening to it, but you get the general idea of when I'm talking about it. It had a really good solo, and was just another song that they crafted that had such an incredible pop-punk vibe, pop-punk tune to it, that I simply can't describe it without you going to listen to it. But Get the Need was easily one of the best songs of that year, as shown by the fact that it was third. I was surprised as well, because I thought I'd listened to other stuff infinitely more than that, but it must have just kept coming up. But I'm not going to complain, it's a cracking tune. And then 20 minutes into this discussion, we finally get to the album in question, and their latest record, The Best Part About Being Human, is just almost painfully optimistic, especially in a world that's got a lot of problems at the moment. In my own personal world, that's also got a lot of issues that I'm sort of pushing forward and trying to make the best out of. It's so gratifying and so nice to have an album that's purely dedicated to just having a good time. It came out at the end of August, or mid-August, so it was fully grasping on the summer vibe that pop punk usually sort of frequents to, and it's not particularly long. I think it's just under 30 minutes, but I mean, Cold Front's album was just over 30 minutes, so it's not exactly doing anything different. And some of the songs in there, it's not necessarily about the length, is something I have heard, but it's not all about length. I mean, the girth of the song is also just as important, and I think all of these songs, I think there are 4 singles in total. The whole point of the album is that every song tells a unique short story of why life is so special, with the sort of pseudo-eponymous track Human coming at the end and sort of closing it off with this big grandiose gesture of positivity, which we will get to. It's at the end. It's a bit like Paulie, we'll get to it at the end. I'd say Human is probably the most important song, but there's a couple in the middle that really sort of stick out and just make the album what it is, a pure joy to listen to, really. I don't think I've had an album in a very long time where I've come out feeling so much better just from listening to it. And that's a huge rarity nowadays. There's a lot of albums out there that I thoroughly enjoy listening to and get a lot out of, but I haven't had an album in a long time really leave an impression on me where I genuinely feel better. It's quite an evolution from some of their older stuff. I remember in an interview with Riot Fest, I think they described it as an evolution itself. It's sort of a combination of the previous 2 records. So they had Blue in the Dark, which is leaned towards the more acoustic indie side of it, and then you had Hello, It's You, which was very pop heavy, pretty chaotic, but had a lot of pop sensibilities rather than focusing on the punk side. They sort of brought the 2 together, have that host pop punk style, but also incorporate some other sounds into it, which we'll get to. I think songs, especially like Ocean Dream, really delve into different soundscapes and stuff like that. But it's interesting to see a band they've already started experimenting. They did it in the record before, and it seemed like the actual process of making the record was just so much more relaxed, and you can definitely hear that in the songs that they've created, purely because it's a relaxed album. It sounds like it's relaxed, and it sounds like that it was made in a relaxed environment. Every single one of them tells that story of positivity. All of them slightly unique. Some of them have overlapping themes, but generally a lot of them stick to the general idea of being happy where you are and with the things that you have, and being content in the world that you're in. And that's just about as positive as it gets, about as honest as it gets. It's not every day that you get an album that sticks solely to having this optimistic presence. It's hard to come by. Every album has at least sort of 1 or 2 tracks that tries to go a bit deeper into the sort of harder traumas or just the general sadder topics. I mean, even Cold Front, Float Around was had that with Paulie and a smattering of others in there. Float Around, the titular track as well, also delved into that. But this one is just purely purely good vibes, and I think you've got to run with that when you can. And we'll start where we mean to start, which is with the debut single Scenery, which also opens up the album itself. This one started off with a very interesting theme of natural beauty. So Scenery, obviously, it kind of gives that away at the start, but it's one that's never really been explored, to my knowledge. I mean, there's probably been some themes of nature impacting yourselves in other songs, but I don't think it's been put into a song like this. Certainly not in a pop-punk song, from what I can tell, but it talks about sort of a nature focus and the beauty of the world around you, and it basically compares beauty and nature to that of someone you're with. So there is a relationship element to it. There's mostly just talk about I believe the actual line is shake up the scenery, know you love the greenery, take me to the view and show you what you mean to me. So it takes the general natural theme and incorporates it into a classic pop-punk tale of love and respect and honesty with a partner, which, again, I want to sort of preface this whole piece going back to what I said in Cold Front's one, which is these bands are not reinventing anything. Like, the vast majority of pop-punk bands aren't reinventing the wheel, because the wheel has already been made and people are just jumping on that bandwagon, you know, that just happens to have that wheel on it. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I can't imagine any of the big leagues changing it up anymore. From what I've heard of Neck Deep's new songs, they're not reinventing anything. They're just taking their sound of most of their last albums, blending it all together and putting it into one album. The Story So Far's new single, Big Blind, I think that's an incredible song, don't get me wrong, but it basically just sounds like them from 2011 on their debut album, which, again, I'm not going to complain. Under Soil and Dirt is incredible, but it has that nostalgic factor, and it just sounds like The Story So Far. And Bearings are exactly the same. They've taken their indie roots and their general pop-punk vibe, blended it all together and turned it into a cracking album, but they're not suddenly becoming auteurs of the genre. They're not creating anything we haven't heard already, but what they've done is they've taken the general themes of the album and really, really run with them. But going back to Scenery, it kind of talks about, this natural presence, and how being around nature and being in sort of the greenery of the world is something that it changes your perspective. You know, for someone who's going through some mental health issues, such as myself and other people that I've met, some people have said just going for a run or going for a walk in a forest or a local field is just, it clears your head, it clears your mind, and it's amazing the power of the natural world. You know, the earth it's quite something. I mean, in autumn, you're not exactly getting the quote-unquote greenery that you would in August, like the band suggest, but it's still it's just relaxing. It's very therapeutic, at least from my experience. I don't know what you listeners think or what the bands think, but generally it's always brought me some pretty positive feels, as it were. And what I've done with specifically this one, when I was writing notes for it, I started incorporating motivational quotes that I've read over the course of the last couple of weeks, and basically pinpointed them with the themes of the record. So Scenery, for example, I pitched in with a nice cheeky quote of, "If you truly love nature, you will find beauty everywhere," which I believe is from Laura Ingalls Wilder, which is basically an American writer. I think she did the Little House on the Prairie series. I might have butchered her name completely, but I started writing these down and just carried on. So every single one of these songs has now got a quote, basically in conjunction with the song. So I'll go through, and once we get to the end, I'll read the quote. And I think it's just going to be something that'll be nice for people to listen to at the end, something to slightly motivate them, and just understand that there are always positive things in the world. And we'll start with nature, because nature is it surrounds us. You know, and it's always there. One thing specifically about nature is that it's always evolving. It's always changing. Just because a tree loses all its leaves in the autumn, it'll grow back even stronger the year after with even better leaves. And it goes through that little cycle. You know, the autumn especially teaches us how to let go. I think that's a major thing about autumn, and the beauty of the colours of the leaves that only really last a couple of days. You know, you see them on the tree, they fall on the ground, and then it's mostly gone. But those few days are what really make it. But yeah, I'll repeat the quote for you. "If you truly love nature, you will find beauty everywhere." Following Scenery was my favourite for a fair while, which was Don't Want to Forget About It. Again, the titles aren't exactly sort of hiding anything from from the discussion that could be had, but it basically talks about leaving a relationship that was bad or toxic for you, but understanding that it made you who you are and evolving from that trouble that you were once in. I can't speak for everyone, but I imagine that the vast majority of people have been in a relationship that has been very toxic or abusive. I've had my own experience in it, both myself being quite a toxic individual and being subjected to a lot of toxicity as well. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I haven't been the best partner to a lot of people for a number of reasons, but what it's done is it's really opened my eyes to understanding exactly the kind of person that I need to be. I don't like admitting when I've done shitty things. No one ever does, but it's important to evolve from that and understand where you've gone wrong. And so hopefully in the future, if something comes about, you can love a person in the right way. But sometimes you just need to know when to step back. You need to understand that sometimes these things happen. Don't want to forget about it. It kind of speaks for itself. There's parts of your life that define you and make you who you are. There's nothing to say that you can't change. Everyone's capable of changing, and it's about how willing you are to do that. I've always said to myself that if something comes about that I'm not happy with, then I'll sort it out. Sometimes it'll take a while, sometimes it might take just a couple of days, but it's about persistence and consistency and just knowing that it's possible. There's a lot of things going on right now that I'm trying to prove that I am a good person. Some of it has gone really well for me personally, but some of them have not gone in the manner that I was hoping, and that's okay. It's about evolving and learning and understanding exactly what is right for certain people and for yourself. And this song really, really delves into that factor about just becoming who you are, just knowing exactly who you are and learning from the mistakes of the past. The quote I found for Don't Want to Forget About It was an interesting one by an unknown person, unfortunately, which is, letting go is hard, but being free is beautiful. I will point out that it's just started raining. We've got fun storms in the UK, from what I can tell, so I do apologise if the rain gets into most of this, if not all of the rest of this. Just thought I'd let you know. It's having a nice time being stormy outside. God, that is loud. I can hear it through my headphones. That is terrible. God, I hope that doesn't get picked up on the mic. I hope that goes. Speaking of going, actually, we go on to the third song and second single, if I remember correctly, which is the song Gone So Gone. Not just called Gone, it's called Gone So Gone. And this is one of the catchiest songs on the album. I've sent this to a number of people who I believe are big fans. It's hard to tell when you send a song to someone and they don't react. They just sort of listen to it in their spare time. It could be awful for all we know. But I do know a couple of people who have said that they're a huge fan of this one, which I'm really glad about. It's very short but sweet, but it's a similar notion to Don't Want to Forget About It. It's got a similar vibe in terms of the relationship aspect, but it's not necessarily about like a partnership. It's about anyone. It's about any person in your life that is troubling you or causing issues. It might even be yourself. You feel like if you're the problem, then you need to get out and escape. Gone So Gone has a whole thing about self-love and just understanding yourself, basically escaping from the life you're living at the moment and focusing primarily on your own self-esteem and your own projects. And it's all about just taking a step back and figuring yourself out. And I think that's important for a lot of people, regardless of their mental state, regardless of their health. I think sometimes you've just got to take a step back and understand what's good for you and what's good for other people. Like I said before, I've caused a lot of issues with a lot of friends, and I haven't been a great person, let's just say that. In my life personally, I've had to take a step back from a number of things, such as groups of friends and some family aspects, purely because there's just issues between certain family members. It's just part of life. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to end that way. I'm hoping that things can be resolved once I've figured myself out. And that's exactly what this song is about. It's about figuring out yourself, exactly the kind of person you want to be, and what you can, basically how you can prove to other people that you're better than your past, better than the person that you were. And that's what I've been proving this entire time. It's the reason I've started this podcast. It's the reason I've started going to therapy and not drinking. It's basically removing that past version of myself and becoming the person I want to be, because there's there's still time. There's always time to start over and be exactly who you want to be. You shouldn't linger on a mistake because you spent so much time making it. You're not a hostage to your past. You have to learn from it, take it in, accept it, and move on and become better. It's such a strong message, but it's such a simple message. It seems like a cop-out message even, just be a better person. But sometimes it takes a good push and an unfortunate push to get people to start doing that. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Self-love will come up again a number of times in this album, but I think this is one of the main ones. I think Human, the last one, also talks about it. But the quote that I picked for this one was a very interesting one. I've been rewatching BoJack Horseman recently because that show, A, incredible. Absolutely watch it if you haven't. But B, it deals with mental health, particularly depression and alcoholism, in quite a deep and intelligent way, considering when you first see it, it's an animated show about a talking horse and who was a 90s TV star, and you think, wow, how is this going to turn into anything? And then you hear quotes from people like Anna, who I believe said this in season 3, episode 1, which was, nobody else gets to tell you what your story is. I think this quote is important to internalize because many people get caught up in what others have to say about them. I mean, I'm a culprit of this. I'm a horrible people pleaser, and my anxiety gets to the point where I feel like either everyone's talking about me or no one's talking about me, and if they are talking about me, then it's usually a bad thing. But we allow ourselves to be defined by others who don't even really understand who we are and what we've been through, and that's an important thing. You can't judge a book by its cover. If people aren't willing to change and aren't willing to do anything about it, then that is just who they are. But if people can change and people have the ability to, then who knows, you might like that story better. You might like the new story better. The only person that knows you better than anyone is you. You have to wake up with you every morning. You have to be with you every day. I think that's a point that gets overlooked a very, very large amount. Like, we are with ourselves the most. We have to put up with ourselves the most. If I remember correctly, there was the film Before Sunrise with Ethan Hawke. I've never watched it, but I remember this quote turning up because I think I read it somewhere where he said, "I've never been out bowling if I wasn't there," making some stupid joke. I think that's why so many people hate themselves. Seriously, it's just they're sick to death of being around themselves. That's a tough one to take in, but I think it's very poignant because it's our story, and we have to like being with ourselves. We have to understand ourselves. And Gone So Gone talks about this focus on self-love and taking a step back and understanding who you are, because the only person that's going to truly understand who you are is you. I was surprised that BoJack Horseman played such a vital role, but yeah, nobody else gets to tell you what your story is. It's a poignant one that it's just a great show, to be honest. Go Long comes next, which is one of the songs that kind of caught me by surprise because it wasn't a single, it wasn't one of the major tracks that I was looking at, but still had a very poignant message about wanting, making, or fixing a relationship that was initially quite bad. It's one that I've particularly stuck to recently due to some recent events that have happened. But it's line in the middle of it, which says, "Nothing that is easy has ever been instant." That really stuck with me because everything takes time. And in recent days, even, I've rushed into something that I probably shouldn't have. And it was my mistake. That it was something that I misjudged completely. I didn't understand or respect certain boundaries. I was just, in my head, I had an idea and it just didn't come about the way that I thought it would. And it's still in my head. It's something that I want to work. I want to understand the boundaries. I have so much love to give, man. Like so much. I've come to the conclusion, really, that I being single is horrid. I'm not a fan of it. I enjoy being around a person that loves me the way that I love them. And I've fucked up a lot. Like, there's a lot of things I'm not proud of and a lot of things I've done wrong in my relationships. I've had a few of them now. One of them lasted way longer than it should have. One lasted even longer than it should have, and messed me up quite badly. And a recent one has unfortunately was entirely my fault that it's all gone wrong. But I'm working towards hoping that last one works. Who knows? I'm hoping that it does. But if not, then it's about just being happy with what it's taught me. I'm not perfect. I'm definitely not. Nobody is. And I've done some shit things, some really shit things. But nothing that is easy has ever been instant. And if you're willing to work hard, which I am, I'm willing to work harder than I ever have before, then it can still work, because I've never been more sure about something, really. It's just been tough, but hopefully the work pays off after all. But the line that I picked for this one that really stuck with it is an Audrey Hepburn one. I can't remember exactly when she said it, but she said, "The best thing to hold on to in life is each other." And I absolutely adore that quote, because it's very similar to the whole idea of, I can't remember exactly when I mentioned it. I think it was Home Is, the EP. God, these things, you forget how much you've talked about after a while, but home isn't necessarily a property. It's a person, someone that you feel comfortable with, someone you feel like you can be yourself around, and that is how I feel about that. I feel like I can be myself around certain people and a certain person mainly, but yeah, it's a strong feeling, and it was one that I really stuck to. It was a bit like how in the last one I was talking about Shut Eyes for a while when I didn't even think about it, but this one really stuck with me, and that Audrey Hepburn one sort of sealed the deal with just how important it was to me. After that was Ocean Dream. Now this one was something that I couldn't really pinpoint at first. I was kind of unsure as to what the meaning was. I listened to it a number of times, and it's probably my favourite at the moment, mainly for its incredible saxophone solo in the middle, but thematically it was kind of an outlier. I feel like I haven't touched on a lot of the music in terms of these songs, but imagine optimistic, bubbly pop punk and you get it. I think in terms of the actual instrumentation, it's not one I can delve too far into. Like the details aren't necessarily important for this one. It's just an album that is really good pop punk album. But what I've gathered from Ocean Dream with this one is that the happiness that comes from this is inspiring others to be better. So rather than it being about self-love, it's also about helping other people. The biggest gift you can give is help. It's important to be kind, it's important to be selfless, and to look after people, look after the people that are less well off, and it doesn't hurt to have good manners and just be a good person. That's what we all strive for, it's what we all want. And this song kind of delves into that. It talks about being explicitly involved in someone else's life, and in a manner that changes everything. You are the person that helps them through the tough times. Again, it was another one of the lyrics that could have been used as the quote on its own, but the chorus itself really goes... You can kind of pick out your own themes from it, but it says, "So now, tell me where you want me to be. I got lost inside your ocean dream. When it starts to feel too heavy, come on and hold me steadier now. I don't know how." The ocean dream, I guess in itself, is this... I guess the ocean is being used as a metaphor for this broad dream. I'm not entirely sure. It was kind of hard to pin down. But I got lost inside your ocean dream, one that's expansive, or maybe the ocean is meant to represent their entire life, or their life force, as it were. But regardless, it's definitely about supporting someone. Come on and hold me steadier now. It's about being there to support a friend, a colleague, a family member, someone you love. It doesn't really matter who it is, but the most important thing is to support people in their aspirations and what they want to do. This one really struck with me recently. I mean, it's been a favourite of mine for a while, but I had my brother come over on the weekend, and both him and his girlfriend now have listened to the podcast, the first one, and just really, really liked it, and openly stated that they really, really enjoyed listening to it. They've said to me that they're more than willing to help in any way possible. I know my older brother's hoping to start a podcast as well that he wants me to come and help with. So it's really gratifying to have people there actually supporting you and telling you exactly what they like about what you're doing, because this has been an aspiration of mine for ages, and I've never really pursued it. I've tried to, but it's been hard. It's been difficult to get off the ground. But I'm so happy that I'm actually doing it now. You just need that motivation to actually get up and go and try it. So to hear other people, not just my family, but other people who have listened to it and genuinely said that they liked it, is quite special, and it really, really, really sort of touched me in a way, because this is what this is all about. It's about people being able to share their experiences with music, and I think the quote that I picked for it was an even better example of this. It said, "Never forget who helped you out while everyone else was making excuses." That was another unknown one. We can't really try. I tried to track down. I looked it up on Google to see if I could find the original quote, but apparently it's just an unknown one anyway. But yeah, if people want to be a part of your life and want to help you, then they will, and that's that's what this song is all about. The next one after this was Howie, You're a Freak. A strange title. I wasn't expecting it. Another song that was a bit of an outlier that I wasn't expecting, but had just a really nice message. Inside all the general nice messages, it was one that I wasn't expecting to be as wholesome as it was, because it involves basically finding someone who makes you believe in love. I know there was a line in 500 Days of Summer, one of my all-time favourite rom-coms, if not my favourite rom-com, that stated like, oh, you know, what is love? And Zooey Deschanel's character basically says, oh, I think you just know it when you see it. And that whole film was a really good example, or a really good sort of comparison with this, because this whole song is about the protagonist being changed and believing in love because they meet the right person. And in the same vein as that, you have 500 Days of Summer, where these two characters meet and they have these 500 days with each other, and eventually Zooey Deschanel's character gets with a new person and marries them within, like, I think 3 or 4 months, or maybe slightly longer, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen the film in a while. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character says, oh, how did you know? Or like, how were you sure? And she said, oh, I don't know. It's just something I wasn't sure with you. And sometimes love finds a way. Sometimes you just have to meet that right person, and it'll tell you, they'll give you everything. I'd like to consider myself a very loving and very romantic person. That hasn't always come across in my actions. In fact, very rarely has it come across in my actions. But I still believe that I can be. My dad is a particularly romantic guy. He's done these little gestures for my mum. My mum was telling me recently about a story with there's like an ad maybe in the 80s or 90s for Rolos, where it was like, oh, would you give someone your last Rolo? And my dad put his last Rolo in a little envelope and posted it to my mum. And it was all squished and horrible at the end when it actually arrived, but she still never forgot it, just because of the gesture that came with it. And you know, they've been happily married, God, this is going to be embarrassing if I don't know, 27 years? They'll have to correct me when I see them next, but I think it's like late 20s, I'm fairly sure, maybe getting close to 30. And then, you know, they adore each other, and it's very lovely to see, and it's little things like that make you believe that there's someone. Basically, I want to be like my dad. I want to be like him, because he's done all these little things, and it's why I try to be romantic. You know, I try to do these little acts, and it's you know, I like them, and I want to be like him because it worked for him. And it's just the moment you find that right person, you know. The quote that came with this one was actually a Reese Witherspoon one, which I was not expecting. But it was, you always gain by giving love. Funnily enough, the next one, which is called Slip, is actually the second song with this title that has been my favourite on an album. Because obviously Slip, the 6th track on Float Around, has been a favourite of mine for a long time. And this one, Slip, which is the 7th track, so close, is a favourite of mine. I mean, this whole album is cracking, but this one was a favourite for a while purely because it had a really, really catchy riff, catchy tune. A lot of Bearing songs have that anyway, but this one particularly stood out. And I think it was the final single as well, so it was really showing off Bearings at their best, basically. But this one is about as blatant as a love song can get. It's about this feeling of love and the feeling that it evokes, and just how good it makes you feel. I think in an interview with Bearings, they stated that Slip, when it came out, they didn't really know the sort of emotional move, for lack of a better term, it would take, because they believed that the first chorus, or the first verse, was actually quite sad and quite melancholy in a way, but it's actually turned out to be quite an optimistic song in the end if you listen to some of the lyrics. I Keep Slipping Up Around You can have connotations on both sides. Maybe it's a negative slip and you keep making mistakes, or it's just slipping as in you can't control yourself, you can't control your feet, and you just feel all giddy and silly around someone. It can have it's about finding your own meaning in the song. I think that's what they described in the interview. But it's a very powerful track because it has it can mean basically whatever you want it to. It's a song that transcends a lot of thematic groundings. I mean, it could mean as positive or as negative of a message as you want it to, but the general instrumentation and the soundscape that it gives off evokes a more positive sound. And the lyrics do support that. It's a lot about being around the right person and just feeling good around them, really. It's about as clean cut, same thing, as a pop punk love song can get, but with a really catchy tune alongside it. I believe this one was from Barbara D'Angelio. Again, I might have pronounced that very wrong, but she was a sort of an American consultant and lecturer on relationships, and she said, "You never lose by loving. You always lose by holding back." Jumping into the final single and the 8th track, which is Live Forever, Never Die. An interesting title at first. When this came out, I kind of read through it, and it just, I don't know, it didn't exactly sort of jump out to me. It seemed like they just put loads of different words together, a bit like Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, but in pop punk form, as it were. But this one takes a completely different tune from a lot of the others, and it's about finding yourself, but while traveling the world. And then it delves into when it goes into the second verse, it talks about then with a partner or a significant other. So it basically encapsulates the vast majority of the themes of the entire album into one neat package. I mean, I want to go traveling the world at some point. I have a couple of trips planned, hopefully, with someone, I'm hoping, but you never know. It might be a sort of a solo venture, which I don't mind. There's a lot of the world I want to see, but I eventually want to go and travel the world because there's so much to see. Sort of lingers back towards scenery, about exploring the natural world and just being one with the planet that you live on. It's very hard to find enthusiasm and motivation when you're sort of living the same day over and over again, going to work, coming back, doing all the random shit that you get up to when you go home. I mean, what did I do today? I came home, I cooked, then came in my room, and then wrote notes for this, and now I'm recording this. So when you put it like that, it's not very interesting. It's quite late at night now. I think it's 11:45 or something. Is it? Oh my god. You've chosen to record this late. Fun. But yeah, I mean, it's still something I want to do, and knowing, you only get so much holiday and you only get so much time to do these things, but it's important to not let that stop you. There's adventures everywhere, and if you're with the right person, then there is adventure everywhere. If you find the right person and the right time, the right vibe, everything falls into place, and you can have the best adventure you've ever had and only travel about 10 miles. I mean, yeah, sure, a nice holiday in the Seychelles or the Canary Islands would be nice, but sometimes you don't have to go that far. You could go to Cambridge or something, or Edinburgh or Glasgow or Cardiff or any of them. I mean, I'm UK based, so I mean that's my local. I imagine if you're in the US or something like that, you could go to somewhere that's in your state. I don't know where a lot of the depends on where you're based, but yeah, UK wise, you've got enough to look at. But then again, when you're with the right person, everything's an adventure, and that really comes into play with the quote that I picked, which is from Lee Hunt. I think it could be Lie Hunt. I think it's spelt lie, but it looks like Lee Hunt. Anyway, he's a dead English essayist and critic, so I'm not sure if he's going to question it. He said, "Travelling in the company of those we love is home in motion." Again, sort of focusing on that point that home isn't a place, it's the people. Coming into the penultimate song, we have I Want to Heal, which, again, it's very to the point. I think this is probably the most blatant song on the record. It's literally about bettering your life and making improvements to get more out of the life that you're living. It's probably the heaviest song on the album. It's got a bit more of a sort of post-hardcore vibe, which comes through in the messaging. It's probably the darkest quote-unquote track on the album, because it talks about personal battles and trying to heal from broken parts of your life, and it's a very strong message, as all of them are, but it really stands out with the heavier instrumentation that comes through. You can tell there's a very internal struggle, there's a battle going on, and the desire to become a better person really, really shines through in this one. And it's one that really struck me, considering what's going on now, and just to keep pushing, and eventually, if you put enough work in, then things will all work out and things will all be okay. And that's the most important message of it all, really. It's really important to know that the effort that you're putting in now is more than enough. You just need to keep trying. It's the consistency that really matters. This quote was sort of a weird one, because I was going through some ideas on which one to use, because I was thinking, obviously there's 100 million quotes on how to better your life, but there was one that I stumbled upon on Twitter from @m_ainfeelings, or main feelings, I presume. I don't know how long ago it was, but it said, "It's on you to get you where you want to be." And that's very simple, to be honest. I think on my notes I've written die. It's on you to get you where you want to die. Oh my god, that is really sad. No, it's where you want to be. I mean, I guess it is up to you where you want to die, but or maybe it's not. Oh god, That quote doesn't make sense at all. Yeah, go with the first version. It's on you to get you where you want to be. And yeah, again, it's very to the point. You know, the one person who has control over your life is you, and you can do everything you can to make that happen. And finally, we get to the closing track, which is Human, the pseudo-eponymous track, if you will, which basically says it all, to be honest. The opening line that has the title in it goes, "The best part about being human is being alive." And that really sums up the whole album in one neat package. You've got the best thing about being here is the fact that you are here. Everyone struggles. There's a lot going on in everyone's lives. But the fact that you're still going and still pushing through is more than enough. I mean, to understand that there are people who are crawling out of these dark places and still fighting is so commendable, and just anyone who's out there having a hard time, whatever it is, whether I know you or whether I don't know you, like, well done, bloody well done. It's not easy. Life is not easy. Life is just a series of events that sometimes push you down, most likely push you down, sometimes raise you up. I think it was another BoJack Horseman quote that had, "Life's a bitch and then you die." And then I think Diane goes, "Well, sometimes life's a bitch and you keep on living." So you have that choice, and the fact that you're still here is about as impressive as it gets. This song is a very short and sweet one to end it on. It's obviously a great tune, got some really good pop-punk vibes coming in there with the guitars, and a little solo to end it on, and then it's sort of like an acoustic epilogue, as it were. It's just a really great song, and really encapsulates the feeling of just being better. I think one of the lines that comes in, it says, "I know slowly over time I'll become someone I might like." And if you can love yourself and like yourself, then that's most of the battle, to be honest. But the actual quote I picked for this one was one that I picked out myself from a book that I really, really like, that I would thoroughly recommend everyone. It was Nicholas Sparks, the author of The Best of Me, where I quoted from him that "You're still alive, and that means you'll love and be loved, and in the end, nothing else really matters." It's one of my all-time favourite quotes from one of my all-time favourite books, and I thoroughly recommend it. And it's just an important message that you matter. Everyone matters. Everyone has a place in this world. Everyone matters. Never forget that. Never. But that is pretty much the sincere beauty of The Best Part About Being Human. It's an album that is purely dedicated to the positive. It is an album purely dedicated to making you feel good. And I can't thank it enough for that. I'm always going to thank the albums and the artists on these, because it's very hard to evoke a feeling like that, especially when people are going through a tough time. This is why something like this is so important to me, doing something like this, because if this album gets recommended to you through me and it even remotely brightens your day, then it's done exactly what it's done for me to you as well. And it's so important to find the good in people and the things that are going on, even if it's really hard. I know a lot of people can't find the good in me at the moment, but I still can. I still understand what my intentions are, and I still understand the kind of person I want to be and feel like that I am. And that's the main battle. That's the main battle, is understanding yourself and knowing the kind of person that you are and who you want to be. I'll always adore everyone in my life. That'll never change. I have so much respect for the people that I work with and the people that I regularly chat to. And while a lot of my intentions, in fact, all of my intentions are good, some of them haven't been. Some of them have happened, and it has defined my past, and I'm not happy about it. But that's why I'm doing something about it. This is why this podcast is here. That's why therapy is here. That's why my sort of alcohol-free app or whatever it is here, because I won't let those past mistakes define me, and I want to be a good person. And it's albums like this that remind me that there is still good in the world, and you can't replace that. There's nothing better than that. But yeah, I just want to pass on that message, because no, if you don't believe in you, I fucking believe in you. What was the tweet that I saw? It was like, oh, if you can believe in Santa for how many years, you can believe in yourself for 10 seconds, a year, a month, whatever. You can, and you can do it. And if no one else does, then I do. So please always know that whoever's listening to this, I love you, and I will always believe in you. But I'll close on two little elements, because there's another Bearings track that's not from this album, but another one that had probably my favourite lyric about this very theme. I believe it was Hear You Say from Blue in the Dark, where it says, "My God, I know it hurts. I'm still trying my best, whatever that's worth. No point in running from it." And that is a perfect encapsulation of the record that they would write 5 years after that. How weird. The only other thing I thought was, the other day now I'm writing my journal and stuff like that. I thought, what better way to showcase something in there? Because this was written, when was this? This was a fair while ago, actually. On the 3rd of October, so even before I'd filmed or recorded the first podcast, I wrote this, and when I was going back through my diary, I read this and realised that if we're talking about love and affection in a lot of these songs, which we have, this was a little poem I wrote called Burns, that was something that I just thought up, and I thought it might be good to share, see if people like it. Because poetry's done a lot for me, music's done a lot for me, and as they said in the Dead Poet Society, beauty, romance, poetry, love, that is what we stay alive for, and this is what is keeping me. Love, it burns like an ember, trailing in the wind, a vestigial piece of fire, burning the ground we walk on, and leaving holes in clothes we wear. We are surrounded by the heat of feeling, and even more impacted by how it changes us. The affection of another cannot be made fake, as real and pure like the burning, the ember that touches our skin, a sensation like no other, both sensitive and calming, like a hug, the love burns. I want to thank Bearings again for the album. It's an absolutely cracking one and probably going to be up there as one of my favourites of the year. And I want to thank you guys once again for listening in. I'm glad to get a second episode out. It's quite hard to plan these things and get any actual guests in. That's going to be difficult. But I'm hoping that you enjoyed this once again. This one, I want to try and keep it to as positive as possible, because those are the albums that I like to talk about, and I see no reason in getting bogged down in all the shit and having music ruin it. So I'm going to keep it as positive and light. Hopefully we'll have more people. If it comes to it again and I do another one myself, then we'll see what happens. But for now, these are the albums that have saved my life. This is another one to add to the list. And hopefully there'll be more to come in the future. So thank you very much again, as always. I'll hopefully have someone to actually join me next time, if I've got the time and the patience for them, and they've got the time and the patience for me. So yeah, thank you all guys, and I shall see you on the next PodStance PunkStance Podcast, the PPP. Yeah, sure, let's keep that in. Nailed it.